Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money. I'm Trevor Nelson, HGA Fundraising. We have a really special guest, a partner of HGA, a friend of HGA. He's the Scottish auctioneer, Jordan Campbell. That's right, he's Scottish. He wears a kilt, full regalia every time he does an event. But he's a very, very talented live auctioneer, fundraising consultant. He does fun and need, emotional appeal, a great fellow, a friend, once again, of ours. He speaks 5 languages. He sold live auction items on 3 different continents. He sold a live auction item for $1 million once. That's right. So this gentleman has a ton of accolades. I'm only naming off a few. And like I said, he's a friend of HGA. We had the pleasure of working with him and a lot of his organizations throughout the year. So please, everybody, enjoy this episode. Make sure also to tune in for the HGA free webinar series where we have Jordan on to answer all your questions. Everything live auction, fund to need, anything under the sun that pertains to fundraising or kilts and tartans, if you like, as well. But before we get into this episode, Bailey, hit the music. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about, events that you have that you're excited about and the consultations you're having like right now and moving forward and gearing up to have a pretty busy season, I'm assuming, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's been obviously busy holiday season. I went back home to Scotland to visit family and so on. It's given me a chance to recharge and get ready for the new season, which is fast impending. Lots of great causes coming up. I think the next event I have is just next week, and that's a really cool one for Recliff. It's an autism charity, side by side with Matt Olson of the Atlanta Braves. Him and his wife are very close with the family who started Recliff. And so that's going to be at Truist Park. So that's it's going to be an interesting one with all the Braves players and really get to grips with some generosity. But apart from that, so many other events coming up. It's a busy spring season, I tell you that. I can't wait because there's a good variety of different events coming up, different themes, different styles. Every nonprofit tries to approach it from a different way. My job is to try and help nudge them in the way that ultimately engages the guests in the best way, and even more importantly, to raise fund, at a maximum level.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things I wanted to talk about. It's interesting. And I love it. I mean, that you're sharing about particular organizations. We don't like to play favorites. We work with so many different organizations, but I do have ones that mean a lot to me, right? And that's the typical thing with a donor or supporter or volunteer. It's like a lot of times, like if it's your child's school or you've been affected by a certain disease or, affliction or what have you, it's like those organizations mean more. And it's also, I'm assuming for someone in your position, I'm not speaking for you, but when you get to work with new organizations that have this fresh approach and at really cool locations, it kind of invigorates you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an absolute honor to work with all of them. I can't think of a luckier job to have, or me being a luckier person to have such a job. Because ultimately, my aim is, particularly during the emotional appeal, after you've done a live auction, which is all about energy and engagement, and getting those pulses racing, and that way, before you move into the fun to need or the emotional appeal element of the evening, is to harness that excitement that they've just had from the live and convert it into that emotion. Because you want to elicit that emotion. You want to make sure the guests really feel in a powerful way the cause and feel what they're donating towards ultimately. And so for each script that I make for each client, my aim is to allow the guests to feel that this guy's not an outside. This guy is with the organization, because I'll do my due diligence, study up, make sure that I feel it as well. And it's hard not to feel any of these causes. And so each one is scripted towards and tailored towards a different nonprofit every single time. And that's my aim, is to elicit emotion and it's not hard for me to get that emotional over it as well. And I think that comes across. And as you say, of course, there's some causes that might touch you personally more than others.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that to a client because they think, oh, you probably say that to all the nonprofits.
Right.
But it's, in all sincerity, there's certain nonprofits I work with where it's hard for me to hold back the tears on stage.
Wow.
I guess you could say that's a great thing, because it really conveys that emotion in a genuine, sincere fashion to the audience. But you've also got to try and hold it back a little bit because you can't be this crumpled up old mess on the stage. and then try and ask for donations. But so there is a good balance to strike. But you're absolutely right. Bottom line, whilst all of the causes are great, there are of course ones that touch you more personally because maybe a family member is being affected by it.
Right.
So, yeah.
100%. I wanted to ask you something. We're always settling this internally and speaking to clients and doing coaching calls. Just getting right to it. Right between the eyes with a crazy question. But okay, so you obviously expert in the live auction, an expert in the emotional appeal or fund a need. Just settle the score for us, or give me your opinion. Are we pulling from two different budgets with donors with those two revenue enhancers, with those revenue
Oh,
generators?
fantastic question. Great New Year's question there, Trevor. You've been prepared. Yeah, ultimately, there is that school of thought. There is
Yeah,
that argument out there that, okay, well, if we have more live auction items, that it takes money away from the potential free, in inverted commas, donations in terms of net profit for the funding need. I'm of a different school of thought. I think obviously you don't want to, as a whole, if you look at it from a bird's eye view, you don't want to have a deluge of all these different fundraising points that ultimately will tick off the guests because they're there for a good time as well. They don't want to be constantly badgered. Not that it is a badgering way to ask for funds, but if you do it too many times in too many ways, then I think that loses its shine when you actually do it. So yes, there is that debate. Okay, well, some fundraisers have 10 plus live auction items. Some have 4, some have 3. And the ones that have 3, they're trying not to detract from the funding need. But my school of thought is effectively is if you do your job right, not only as an organization, not only as an event itself, the theme, the feel, the vibe, every single part of the run of show, telling a story, weave together, threaded seamlessly, then, and plus the auctioneer, of course, doing his or her job right, then you should be able to open up the floodgates for donations from all sides. Because obviously there's other factors. There's silly little factors that make people laugh. Is what drink are they on by that point?
right.
That's always sounds like I'm being flippant, but it's true. There is a sweet spot. I call it third drink sweet spot. But that aside, there's all these different elements and factors that are into play. That if the live auction is done in an exciting way, plus they're the right live auction items for that demographic, and if the emotional appeal, whether it's a video, whether it's a grieving family, or whether it's cancer or arthritis or whatever the cause, as long as there's some sort of touch point there. As the auctioneer myself, for example, getting up there and playing on that emotion in the room and making sure that everyone feels it too, and really touching their hearts, then there's no reason absolutely why there should be a debate between less of the live or more of the live,
Right.
and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, we agree about that. But that's a, it's a road that we're all hauling together. You know what I mean? So,
Bless it. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, there are always going to be those naysayers who say, "Oh no," but what if? What's the expression? Cut off your nose to spite your face. You're trying to do the best thing by thinking, okay, well, I can dedicate more funds or donations potentially to the fund need by taking from the live auction. But what if by doing so you're leaving money out there?
yeah, totally
Yeah, there's
true.
no harm in trying everything.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. No, I think it's awesome. I appreciate you putting it so eloquently. You bring so much to events, and I've seen you, in action, and in full regalia, and you quote unquote you work the room before the event, during the event. You're out there, and what's interesting is I jotting down some notes before we met. I'm frightened of having a microphone in my hand and public speaking and things. Interpersonal, love it. I love people. I love communicating. I'm not an introvert, but for some weird reason, I'm just frightened of having the microphone in my hand. And you just seem so natural, engaging. A lot of times in crowds where you've never met the people, you know what I mean? Obviously, you can't meet 500 people in a 500 person event, all at the same time or at all sometimes. But has it always come so naturally to you, or did you have to overcome your own, trepidation and fear about it and what have you?
Well, yeah, first and foremost, I'm blushing. Thank you for the
It's
compliments.
true though. Yeah, yeah.
It's not an overnight thing. I think it's a mixture of nature and nurture, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's taken years to be able to lots of public speaking and so on to get to the point where I can finally go up. And luckily, it's been a few years doing that now, where I'm not having to do 3 deep breaths. Where I'm not having to. What I used to do was I take 3 long deep breaths. My mother always used to say, before I took an exam as a wee boy, wouldn't take 3 deep breaths and then go for it. And so I would used to do that for a long time, but then I realized I didn't need to anymore because it came to the point where I'd done it so many times. But I think ultimately it's understanding that the guests and the advocates of the cause, they're spending their hard-earned money on the tickets to go as a minimum, and they're just taking their Friday night. They've maybe got a babysitter in many cases, and they're all dressed up. They're there to have a good time, as well as learn about the cause and resonate and donate. But you don't get the resonance and the donations without that first part, which is engagement and excitement for them to feel, oh, I'm part of something. So all that to say, I think my job is more than just doing an auction. It's a performance by the end of the day of some type. It's knowing the audience, reading the audience, understanding how to corral the audience and bring them all in one direction. Because they're there to have a good time, you can't demand all of their attention. Some might be at the bar at the back, some might be speaking to their neighbors. But if you engage them enough, then they will all watch you. They'll all resonate with the cause and pay that respect to the cause. So yeah, I think as a performance, I think you've got to be occasionally have a bit of wits and have a bit of banter with the audience. I think that's key, is to identify people in the audience that you can look at and go up to and shake their hand and give them a high five occasionally and have that back and forth, because then they feel even more part of it. I mean,
Right.
that's super important, is that everyone feels together. I'm not just a guy talking at them on stage. It's all me. My idea is to make them feel part of it. And that's why I run around a lot. I use it, as I think I said last time, as a workout.
Yeah.
It's I look how many steps I do on my phone afterwards, because I wear the kilt and my phone's in the bag, in the sparring, we call it, the little bag in front of the kilt. And it's just about 13, 14, 15,000
Wow.
steps
Yeah.
a night,
That's awesome.
just because I'm running back and forward. And I think that creates that frenzy. Every auctioneer is different. Some do it differently. And that's my certain style with my personality. And hopefully, so far, so good. I think it works sometimes.
It's definitely working. It's definitely working. Well, I remember from our last conversation, if I recall, you speak 5 languages. You've sold items in live auction on 3 continents or maybe more, I'm assuming.
So yeah, the language wise, yeah, I've just always been a big fan of languages. I studied at university in St. Andrews, Russian and Spanish, and then I went to China for 13 years. Did auctions with Yao Ming there, the basketball player from Houston Rockets, and I just love languages. I was always rubbish at maths and science and things like that. So languages were my thing,
I'm the same.
and it's good because in certain clients, certainly in the South right now, some of the clients I've worked with, I try and employ some of the Spanish. There's not so many Russian speakers in the audience or Chinese speakers, but certainly in other parts of the US, I'm sure I'll encounter at some stage.
I speak Spanish and English only at the moment, but I've been the same. I've always had a real fondness of language. And you got to go to Scotland with an infant, by the way. So good on you. So over the holidays, we went to Puerto Vallarta, and so my little 5-year-old speaking Spanish now as well, and still speaking it now when we got home. So I'm assuming young Charlie's going to pick up on some language too, just by being around you by
Oh yeah,
default.
hopefully, I don't know. Obviously, he's been brought up in the States, so I'm gonna expecting that American accent to coming out once he starts speaking. He's only 7 months old now. Daddy, can we go to the mall? Sort of thing
Right.
going on. So I'm gonna try and make sure that we temper that somewhat.
Yeah, get that boy traveling,
Just so he gets his Scottish heritage. But
of course.
yeah, the Scotland was great. It's always good to get back home, and then once you have that break from that fundraising season, it actually gives you a time to reflect and to think of new ideas and new ways to approach the shows and the fundraisers. So it's yeah, it's nice to be back though.
Well, if you don't mind letting some things out of the hat, so to speak, give me some of those new thoughts and things that you want to implore this upcoming season and beyond that you're just.
Yeah, just a couple of wee things, because I always think with events, it's the small things that make the biggest difference. So all these tiny little touch points that the guests see, and either consciously or subconsciously. One of the things that I would recommend is, well, a couple of small things, is that if there is a theme, have your. I know you might. I'm preaching to the choir, and any other auction teams out there might already be doing this, but if it's a theme, just to make sure that your bid spotters and clerks are heavily invested in that theme. We've got one coming up that's a carnival theme, and so I've got the ringmaster hats. I'm going to wear the kilt, of course, naturally, but ringmaster hat and the cane, and just these little touches that they feel, and your bid spotters and clerks are wearing the same, and just so the audience feels that these guys are really in this. That's it's all those little touches. And then during the cocktail hour, one of the things we always found was when it came to live auction items, when people were doing the hour of mingling prior to going through to start the program, is there's not as much visibility for the live auction items. So aside from the standard recommendation of having on easels the beautiful live auction items printed out on beautiful backboards, great pictures, the absolute minimum of information in terms of the benefits of the live auction next to the bar area, because obviously that is an icebreaker area where people line up and wait for their drinks. But also have your volunteers or your bid spotters actually take the large posters off the easels and walk around.
Love it. Love
Yeah,
that.
kind of like Wheel of Fortune style,
Yeah.
walking around. But because that brings eyeballs to the live auction items and brings a little bit of intrigue as well. So, I just missed that. Someone was walking around with a board. I'm going to follow them.
Yep.
And then they engage with them and talk to them. And so that's just, all these little things. And when you're on stage as well, it's every single auctioneer has a different strategy for trying to, if there's a rowdy crowd, is how do we get them to chill out?
Yeah.
And
Focus
to
on the mission.
engage and to listen
Yeah.
without being mean, without being rude. There's always different ways. I have my way, and I think it's all about exuding a certain amount of. Hopefully, if they like you as an auctioneer, then they'll listen to you. I think that's the bottom line. If they like you, if you're likable and affable on stage, then immediately they're drawn in and drawn to the cause.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it means the world. I love what you said. You said it was a we point, but I think it's massive to advertise these items. I think it's massive to advertise the items pre-event, during the event. I love the easels. I love them in high traffic areas, but I love your idea. I like them having a secondary at check-in, check-out even, or as you mentioned, beautifully walking around, stirring up some emotion with them and obviously some interest. I think that's lovely. I think it sounds simple, but it's so effective. It can be so effective.
And just to add to that, I mean, we always forget that when it comes to selling on stage of the live auction items, it shouldn't just be visual and hearing, because we have what, six senses, or that's the Bruce Willis movie? No, five senses.
Right.
How many senses do we have?
Yeah.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a multitude of senses that sometimes we forget when we're selling, because effectively, when you're on stage, to a certain degree, it is a sale, because you're trying to sell them on the idea. But in most cases, with live auction items, it's not a sale, because people are there to help. People are there, and they also get a great live auction item. But I think is to sort of touch upon the other senses. So when it comes to, there's a Top Gun package sold recently it was fantastic. A chance to fly in one of these fighter jets and to learn about the maneuvers a la Top Gun. So when I go, and the next item, ladies and gentlemen, is, and then the music comes on, the Top Gun music.
Yeah.
And for 10 seconds, and everyone in the room is all buzzed, and then you sell it. So all these extra sensory elements you can use in live auction to augment and amplify what you're selling, or what you're putting up for auction. And so, and then going into the audience as well, having a little bit back and forth with them, especially the ones that are interested by it. And if I've done my job right, then I will know during the cocktail hour prior who are the ones that are interested, particularly interested, who are the ones' eyes really glowed when they're looking at the live auction.
Right. Yeah, so folks, it's going to become a situation, if that item stays alive, it'll be a "Were you alive when the original Top Gun came out?" type question with the audience. Or how old were you? More like it. How old were you when the original came out? Yeah, that's awesome.
I was probably, well, me personally.
Yeah, no, I meant just I'm giving you I'm giving you advice that's free. It's free advice to use to engage the donors.
Well, that's a good idea. No, I will be using that.
That's awesome. No, I think it's cool. I think that there's with music, for instance, we're actually really, really big on like sonic branding with a lot of our items, and playing music with the live auction, for live auction lots, and when the videos go up and things of that nature. And I think that's actually really, really impactful, because, like you said, from a sensory perspective, I mean, it just, the Top Gun song is going to bring up nostalgia for some folks, and oh my gosh, and the adrenaline goes up, and this and that.
Well, that's it.
Yeah. Great example.
Yeah, and you touched upon nostalgia. That's one of the, if you ever watched the series Mad Men, one of the great scenes that they say in it, that Don Draper says, he talks about nostalgia and how it's so powerful, and it's from the Greek, that's nostalgia, which is basically the opening up of an old wound. So that painful feeling, and in many cases, a longing for something of times gone by. And so, if you can invoke that nostalgia in the audience when it comes to certain elements of what you're selling or what the auction item is, then you're onto a winner.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. For me, for some reason, I wrote this down recently because I write every day. It smells. Music definitely does it. Music definitely does it for me. It's like, like your life's soundtrack, right? Music, a certain song or what have you will take you back
Yes.
to a time, right? Or a situation or an experience, but it smells and it's so interesting. We're not going to do scratch and sniff posters for our live auction or silent auction items anytime soon. But when you see like Maui, for instance, on a poster, and I just remember, like, for the first time I ever went there, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's like the air smells sweet," because of all the flora and fauna, that kind of stuff. I just think, like you said, you can just really, really play
Oh,
on
you're
that. It's an
right. Well, there's our
underutilized
next
tool.
business idea there, Trevor. Our next business idea, we're going to find out these machines that just whacked in the scent of Maui and
We could do it.
Africa and wherever it might be that they're going.
Yeah, we could do it. That's for sure. I don't. There's nothing that stops us at this point. I believe it's the greatest time ever to be alive. I believe it's the greatest time ever to raise money. I really, really do. I think there's more money. I know you and I have a lot in common with these thoughts. I think at the greatest time to raise money, I think there's a tremendous amount of money in the system, more than ever, obviously. And I know that you're very optimistic, very glass half full, and we're constantly preaching that to our clients as well. It's like, don't be afraid to push the envelope, don't be afraid to ask, don't be afraid to inject your live auction with some new items that you've never done before. A big thing, and I want to hear your feedback about this because you're actually the one doing it with the microphone, is we hear a lot, oh, our silent auction was underachieving or our live auction underachieved. And we always say, frankly, I mean, not we say it very kindly, is, well, why don't we give your donors something that they want? And you mentioned like the Top Gun thing, and we talk, and we're obviously in the trips and experiences business, and I just think it can be that simple sometimes. And so when you talk to a client, do you tell them to pull the board, the committee, go through data from previous years and see what worked? And do you, inject from a consultative standpoint any kind of feedback about, hey, this is a good idea on how we can get some feedback on what folks really want? Because if we give them what they want, if we color outside the lines a little bit and give them the Top Gun experience, that's going to work because it's cool. But, talk a little bit more about, just helping folks understand that we got to give folks what they want. So, items that are cool.
It's a great area to explore because ultimately one of the first questions I ask, I have the hours of consultation calls prior to the event with the
Right.
client to go through everything from the run of show to the live auction items, the fund and need, how to approach this, what to do, what not to do, what worked previously, what will work as far as we believe based on that. But one of the questions I ask is always about the demographic. Tell me about your audience. Tell me who they are. And they'll go through, okay, well, maybe 50% male to female, age ranges are this, there's a huge range. And then that's all useful information, but I also want to know who they are, why they come into the evening, what's their affiliation with it. And obviously I can't do that for every single one of the 300, 1,000 guests or whatever it might be. But it's the idea to get a feel. So in these consultations, the whole time is I'm trying to get a feel of who the audience are, feel for the event itself, to imagine, and my aim is to put the nonprofits, the teams I work with, who are organizing the gala, put them in the shoes of a guest. I ask them to close their eyes at the beginning, sometimes, not all the time, but I ask them most of the time, and just thrust themselves into the evening. You're walking in, what happens? What does the registration desk look like? What does the cocktail hour? What is on my left? What's on my right? Where can I get a drink? All these sort of questions as we go through during my consultation so that we have every touch point covered, because it's not just on stage that suddenly I didn't know there was a live auction, suddenly they're having to make a split decision. No, they've already thought about, the guests have already had in their minds on some level, A, I know which live auction item I'm going to buy. B, I don't know what the live auction items are, but I want to donate on some level tonight, so I might have a flutter, I might have a bid anyway. Or C, I know what they are, but I have a limit on what I'm ready to spend. But the idea is every touch point, from the cocktail hour, where I told you they go around with the signs and see the live auction items, to the music, to everything, is if the guests feel looked after, if they feel this is a really fancy exclusive night, and even if it's not, that's not the aim, as long as it hits the theme, then they're far more willing to put up money, far more willing to go that extra few $100s on a live auction item, whereas previously they might have not have done. It's all those touch points throughout. And as you say, Trevor, perfectly, prior to the event as well, a bit of marketing, like emails. Oh, we're 3 days out, ladies and gentlemen. Did you see that live auction item we've got coming up in Tuscany? That sort of idea. So people start to get excited because people do earmark. If anyone that's listening to this has ever been to a casino, the smart thing to do is to go into the casino knowing I know how much I'm going to spend and on what I'm not going to go beyond.
This is my ceiling. Yeah.
Yes, leave the credit card at home.
Right.
But some people are like that when they go to these events as well. And in many cases, of course, there are the outliers where a spur of the moment decision. Wow, okay, I didn't think of that. I'm going to spend it, whatever. But I think setting up the client for success, going back to your original point, is really all about looking at what is selling well in the market based on our experiences as the auctioneers and yours, of course, as those providing those great live auction items, is to say, okay, well, Tuscany's been done a lot recently. I've done 10 events and every single one had Tuscany for the sake of argument, but Spain and Portugal are doing quite well, or the Caribbean or Mexico or wherever it might be. And it's my job to go to the client and just sort of nudge them in those directions, because I can't say you have to do this, because ultimately it's their board and their committee who will procure the either donated items or the consignment items. All I can do, and my best point of value, I think, on this front is to say, look, this is the understanding I have of the market right now. Here's my understanding of your audience. Ultimately, you will know your audience better than I do because you've been with them for years. But this is how human psyche works in the market. And so this, I would recommend, it's a live auction.
Totally. Yeah, I think a lot of times, a lot of organizations, and I forgive them, I think they overthink it. I think that maybe one person steamrolls the whole committee or the board, and their opinion means more than what's really in the market, what the market's really telling us, as you mentioned, and that's unfortunate, because once again, you say, cut off your nose to spite your face, leave money on the table, and that's the unfortunate side of it.
I mean, as lovely as it is, because the intention there is excellent, is to have board members that manage to procure donated items. That is a beautiful thing, because you're getting someone's timeshare in Jamaica or wherever it might be, and it's pure net profit, for lack of a better term. But at the same time, you might not be able to sell it more than once. If it's really popular, then you're stopping yourself from selling multiple times and therefore getting more money for it.
Right.
I see the pros and cons to both,
yeah,
of course. And especially if it's a donated item, if that donor is in the audience, that is awesome, because that means I can go up to those donors in the audience, tell me more about this. Thank you so much. Making them feel, and people psychologically around them, especially on their table, are more inclined to bid.
Totally.
If that donor is in the audience, because that's just
there's
the way
a one-to-one
humans
connection.
are.
It seems like,
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you touched on another point. I just think I'm a big believer in this, and I think that we agree. Leaving, when it comes to the advertising of any item for that matter, or what's going on, no surprises. Advertise everything. That's how we're built right now, from how we take in information digitally. At the moment, we're big on handwritten notes as well, but I don't want to get into the minutia about advertising for events and whatnot. But they're all very effective, and we need to employ all of those strategies. But I'm just a huge believer in advertising these items pre-events. There's nothing left to chance, and when we get the chance to consult with folks and coach them on their items, when we actually get to that point, we spend more time talking about pre-event fundraising and just coaching in general than we do really talking about items. Actually, when we get to that conversation, it's like nothing left to chance. Let everyone open, full kimono, show everyone everything that you're offering. And I say they're going to figuratively start packing their bags. You know what I mean? It's kind of like going through the process, so to speak. And I just think that
that's what you guys do so well, HGA. Is just feedback from clients is that you're very responsive and you take them through all the pros and cons as well, because there's nothing better than having someone talking about a package, but also talking about the cons, because it shows that you're not just there to sell. You've got to give them the full picture, and you guys do that excellently.
I appreciate that.
The packages you have are very attractive to clients and to these nonprofits, and ultimately that the more variety is always better.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Thanks for the kind words. It means a lot. Well, we think the world of you, and as a partner of HGA, and really looking forward to this next year and all these different organizations and how much fun it's going to be. It is a privilege. It truly, truly is a privilege to get to do what we do. Grateful that we get to do it together, Jordan, and that we get to help your clients. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I can't thank you enough for the time. Can you do me a favor? Will you let folks know where to find you, brother, whether it's LinkedIn, a social handle, your website, all the above?
Sure thing, yeah. Jordan-Campbell.net. I think you say Jordan-Campbell.net in America. Either that or email me at jordan@jordan-campbell.net.
Cool. I appreciate that. And then, hey, bid in the UK was Flutter? What was it called? What'd you call it?
Right?
What'd you refer to a bid?
Have a flutter.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a turn of phrase we use. It's usually when it comes to either playing poker or bidding. Just have a wee flutter. Just go for it. Have a wee bid.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, we're gonna start using that one. I'm gonna quiz the team internally. What that means. Hey.
Good. Well, I'm glad I could impart some British wisdom.
Can't thank you enough for the time. Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you and your young family.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you.
You too. Speak soon.
All right, later,
Bye.
Jordan.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you love our podcast, click the download button, rate us, and follow us on social media at HGA Fundraising. Get out there, start fundraising, and raise more money. See you next time.